really comes down to the mandate for these actions. It's hard to secure internationally. It's been very hard to secure domestically for President Obama. Let's bring in Senator Angus King. He's an independent from Maine. He's also on the Intelligence and Armed Services Committee. Senator, good to see you. What are your thoughts so far on what has happened in this war against ISIS?
Well, it's sort of breathtaking what's happened in the last week, and I have to say, listening to that speech of the president yesterday in the UN, I think he's sort of found his leadership legs in the last few days, where he's really been able to, I think, have some significant success in terms of rallying world support. He made the important point that you had in that clip a few minutes ago. The Muslim world, this is a moment of real soul searching within the Muslim world. They have to decide whether they're going to stand up to this brutal perversion of their religion, or whether they're going to passively sort of sit by. And the countries in the region are the ones that are ultimately going to have to make that decision and make the fight. You mentioned a few minutes ago, where's that oil being sold? It's being sold to other places around the Middle East. And I've heard, and this isn't from the Intelligence Committee, this is just in open source communication, that Turkey is where a lot of that oil is going. Places like Turkey are going to have to make a decision. It's very hard for them politically and I suspect emotionally, but this isn't a war of the West against Islam, although that's what ISIS wants to make it. But as of this morning, and this is going to be a long slog, but as of this morning, I think we're making some progress.
How much information are you getting from the White House on the Intelligence Committee about what's happening before it happens? And how much progress do you think the president made in attracting big names to the coalition with his speech yesterday?
Well, I think he made progress yesterday with the Arab states actually participating. The word they use in Washington is kinetically. That's a euphemism for airstrikes and other kinds of actual war activities. We had some of the Gulf states participating yesterday, Belgium and the Netherlands. Britain, I think, is going to join today. France is going to get involved. So I think they are making progress. I have to say, Chris, in the clip it talked about Cameron's calling the Parliament in to vote to give him the authority, and as you know, that's something I think we should be doing in our Congress.
I was hoping you'd mention that.
I think it's a responsibility of Congress to step up and put its fingerprints on this and basically say, yeah, we're going to accept our constitutional responsibility and participate in this decision.
Do you think that there is a sense of collective shame, or should there be, watching how the UK is going about the process versus how this Congress did? No irony that the Congress isn't even in session right now. Cameron calling them back, them voting only on Iraq to make sure that there is unity and responsibility in a situation that is fraught with risk. This Congress, nothing.
Well, I can't disagree. I heard the clip, and he said, Parliament's coming back into session, and my thinking is we ought to be doing the same thing. You and I have talked about this, Tim Kaine and I and Jim Inhofe and Nelson. I think importantly, though, Chris, I think it's going to happen. Bob Menendez, who's the chair of the Foreign Relations Committee that's in charge of this kind of process, has said he wants to make it happen. The president has been keeping us informed. The White House has been sending us notifications under the War Powers Act. So I think technically they're in compliance. I think we're going to get to it. It's really a question of timing and what the final wording's going to be.
You know, though, that the War Powers Act, I mean, that's really just about how long the president can go it alone. This vote needed to happen already. You're already at war. There's a lot of risk, and the Congress simply punted on it, even though it saw fit to sue him for executive action on much more penny-ante issues than going to war.
Hey, Chris, you're preaching to the choir, man. That's I've been saying this for a month.
I am. You're right,
but,
Senator. You're right. I am certainly not pointing to you. You want to vote.
I don't get to set the schedule, but
I know.
I think it is going to happen. But yeah, we should have. I think we should have had that discussion and debate. There's this kind of inertia. The calendar was set, and elections, and all of that kind of thing.
It's the midterms. It's the midterms, and it's easier to just go after this guy.
It's fallen into disuse. Politics should stop at the water's edge.
Yes.
This kind of world crisis that we're engaged in. I mean, can you imagine being president of the United States this week with ISIS and a Khorasan group in Syria, beheadings in Algeria, Ebola in Africa? I mean, we're we're in a this is a moment of great crisis, and some of my people say, well, why should we be involved? And I guess my response is that the good news is we're the leading country in the world, and the bad news is that carries with it responsibilities that we just simply can't avoid.
Well, but that's why it should be debated, and you move forward or not. You know, with the Syria situation in UK, they got together, the Parliament voted, they said no, he didn't do it. Here we had to do that dance with the red line. That certainly doesn't make us look strong at home or abroad in terms of how people perceive the U.S. Let me ask you something about U.S.-specific policy, though. What happened with Khorasan? The U.S. went it alone, bombed outside Aleppo in Syria, took a lot of people by surprise. What do you know about specific imminent threats coming from this offshoot group of al-Qaeda?
Well, if I told you what I did know and do know entirely, both you and I would go to jail, so I'm not going to do that. I am going to tell you that this was a very serious threat. I think that the way to think about it is these guys, the Khorasan group, were essentially strictly in the export of terrorism business. ISIS is, consolidating territory, trying to hold ground, set up a caliphate, have a country. Khorasan is not into any of those things. They're into strikes at the West and, as many people as they can kill as possible. So they were a direct threat, and frankly, I was very glad to see those strikes, because I think they were the more immediate, the immediate threat. The other piece I think that's important is the strikes on those oil facilities that ISIS has, because that's where they're getting most of their money. But I can't really go into any detail, Chris, except to tell you those strikes were definitely justified.
Of course not, but you're not a man who's known for being quick to violence, so if you feel that it was justified, that sends the message that we're looking for here to the viewers today. Senator Angus King, thank you very much for joining us, and I'm glad we're not going to jail. This is Derek Jeter's last game tonight. I don't want to have to miss it, being in the Huskow. Thank you for joining us.